Three witnesses tell four different stories about what happened to one man, Charles Vallow. Let's break down what Lori, Tylee, and Alex said happened the morning of July 11th, 2019, and see if we can find anything close to the truth. Hi everyone, I'm Chris from Guilty Words, where we break down crime one word at a time. We know Alex Cox killed Charles Vallow. But the circumstances surrounding the shooting at Lori's house in Chandler, Arizona are incredibly unclear. And part of that is because Lori told the police one story, her daughter Tylee told the police another, and Alex Cox himself had two different versions in the space of one interview. This is the first in a four-part series about the death of Charles Vallow. Tonight we're going to look at what each of them said happened on that morning, and then in parts 2 through 4, we'll look at how each of them explained it, because their word choices and language during their police interrogation may give us some insights into what happened as well. So let's look at the four accounts together. Lori was living in the 5500 block of South Four Peaks Place in Chandler, Arizona. We couldn't find a diagram of the house, but on Zillow there's another house in that block for sale, so I took a look at those pictures, and then based on the descriptions given by Tylee and Lori and Alex, and a sketch that Alex did, I recreated what I believe is a fairly accurate representation of the layout of the house. It's not to any kind of scale. This is just so we can follow the movements of the people involved. Let's begin with Lori's version of events. Lori said Charles arrived between 7:35 and 7:40 in the morning to pick up JJ for school. JJ grabbed his backpack, Charles went out and put him in the car and realized that he had left his phone in Lori's house. He came back into the house to get the phone. Lori had picked it up. She was walking around the living room kitchen area with it. In her hand, she was holding it up so that he couldn't reach it, and he was screaming. As he was yelling, Tylee comes out of her room with her baseball bat, comes down into the living room, and is telling Charles to leave Lori alone. At this point, Alex also comes out of his room and comes down and around and kind of behind Charles. Charles grabs the bat from Tylee, and Tylee falls, and Alex came up behind Charles, and Charles turns around and starts hitting Alex with the bat, swinging several times. Then he and Alex are on the ground grappling. Lori is trying to go around them, and she tells Tylee to go get in the car with JJ. So Tylee leaves. Lori manages to get around. The two of them had got up. Alex stepped back, and Charles was coming at Lori with the bat and yelling at Lori to give him his phone. Lori was in the kitchen area, and her back was turned, and she heard the shot. She didn't see it, but she heard it. And when she turned around, Charles was on the ground, and Alex was standing in front of him. Alex didn't say anything. They were both in shock. They were both freaked out. And Lori went into what she called mom mode, where I have to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids. So she immediately went outside. Then she said Alex called her when she didn't come back in to ask if she was taking JJ to school, and she told him to call the police. Lori doesn't know at what point Alex got the gun, but he didn't leave the room, so he must have had it with him. And prior to the shot, Lori doesn't remember Alex or Charles saying anything to each other. According to Tylee's account, about 7:50 in the morning, she was in her room, and she awoke to incredible screaming from the hallway outside her door. When she opened her door, Charles was right near her door. Alex was just across from him in the doorway to the guest room where he was staying, and Lori was in Alex's room, kind of hiding behind him. Charles was incredibly angry, screaming, but Tylee didn't remember what he was so upset about.
She grabbed a baseball bat and came out and told him to step back because he was too close to her. He shouts at her, "Don't tell me what to do." Then Tylee said basically everyone moved to the living room. She wasn't specific on who went in what order, but the positions they ended up in the living room were Charles somewhere like this, Lori over here opposite Charles, Tylee over here, and then Alex came and kind of went around the back of Charles. And this may have been more into the living room. Again, I'm not sure of the exact space and dimensions. Tylee said that she kind of poked the baseball bat between Charles and Lori, kind of towards Charles, so that he would back away from her. He said if she hit him with it, she would go to jail. They have a tug of war over the bat. Charles is trying to pull it from Tylee. Tylee's not letting go. Tylee loses her balance, starts falling to her side. Lori says, "Tylee, go outside with JJ." Tylee starts to get up off the floor, and she says she sees Charles step back. And she thought her uncle Alex pulled him. That's what she assumed, but since she was lying on the floor and her eyes were supposedly more towards the door, she didn't see the details. She just saw Charles take a step back away from Lori and thought her uncle had something to do with it. She got up and she heads out the front door to go be with JJ. When she gets outside, she says eventually Lori followed her. At one point, she heard a loud crack. She thought it was the baseball bat hitting the floor or something really hard. And when asked if her mother came out immediately or a little while later, Tylee pauses for a little bit and then says, "Pretty soon right after, because I didn't have much time to think about it." An interesting note, Tylee then says that Lori asked her to go back into the house to get her purse from her bedroom. And I'm a little confused on how Tylee got in. She said she went in through the garage, which is going to be over here somewhere. And I don't know if there was a door right here that she came into and went in Lori's room, or if she actually went through the kitchen and came over here and back out again. She did say in her statement that she went in through the garage and she tuned everything out and she didn't see or hear anything. Let's take a look at Alex's first version of the events. He said he came out of his room to see his sister coming down the hallway with Charles following her, and Charles was screaming at her. He doesn't know what about. She came into his room, and he stepped between her and Charles. Tylee came out of her room at that point with a bat, and then somewhere in the midst of this going on, Lori came out, went around Alex, apparently went around Charles too, and went into the living room. Charles followed her into the living room, as did Tylee with the baseball bat, and then Alex as well. As Alex was coming into the room, Tylee was telling Charles to get away from her mom, to get back, and poking him one time with this aluminum bat. Charles took the bat away. Alex said, "What are you doing?" and went to get between Tylee and Charles. And Charles hit him with the bat. Alex fell down, and when he got up, Charles was still yelling. So then Alex left to go to his room to get the gun. When he came back, he says both Tylee and Lori were gone. He doesn't know where. It was just Charles in the room. Charles threatened him with the bat and said, "What are you going to do?" And Alex told him to put the bat down. Charles came at him, and Alex shot him. He went to the kitchen to rinse off his hands because they'd gotten bloody because he touched his bloody head. Then he went into his bedroom where he put the gun down. Then he went back into the kitchen where he called 911. He did attempt to do CPR as the 911 operator instructed him to. When he's reviewing what happened in the hallway at the beginning of the altercation, he suddenly says that when Charles came down the hall,
he shoved Charles and Charles fell to the ground. And that's when Lori came out and went down the hallway. And also that's when Tylee came out with the baseball bat. Charles got up, went out in the living room. Tylee followed. Alex followed. He said Charles grabbed the bat from Tylee, but this time he said he and Charles shoved each other a little bit. Alex got spun around, and that's when Charles hit him on the back of the head with the baseball bat. But he didn't fall down. He just kind of whipped his head around a little bit. And then he went to go get his gun. But just in case that's not confusing enough, when he's doing a final summary with the officer, he tells yet another version of what happened in the living room beforehand. We go back to the point where Charles grabs the bat from Tylee. And then Alex says it looks like Charles is going to hit Tylee with the bat. And so he grabs Charles from behind over the shoulder and pulls him back. And they both fall to the ground. Alex is getting up when Charles hits him from behind with the bat. And then Alex gets up and goes into his room to get the gun. There are quite a few inconsistencies in the story. The first one we'll talk about is why Alex was there in the first place. Now, Lori said Alex had come over that night to protect her from Charles. But Alex denied that. The police asked him a couple of times, and each time he insisted that he came over because he, Lori, and maybe the kids were going to do something fun the next day, like go shooting at the range. Then there's the matter of the actions in the hallway by the bedrooms. So Lori said everything happened in the living room, nothing happened in the hallway. Alex said that Lori and Charles were in the hall right outside his room. Lori came in for protection, and in one version, Alex pushed Charles down, and in another version, he does not. Tylee said Lori and Charles were outside in the hallway, and she spoke with Charles, and Alex didn't shove Charles, or at least she didn't mention it. The baseball bat. So Lori said Charles grabbed the bat from Tylee. Tylee fell on her side. Charles turned around and hit Alex with the bat several times. They both fell to the ground and grappled. Grappled was her word. Tylee said Charles grabbed the bat and she fell, so consistency. She thought Alex pulled Charles back, but she couldn't tell from the angle that she was lying at, and then she ran out of the house. Alex has two different versions. In the first version, Charles grabbed the bat and was threatening Tylee, so Alex got between them. Charles and Alex tussled. Both fell to the ground. Charles hit Alex with the bat as Alex was getting up. Later in the same interview, Alex says Charles grabbed the bat from Tylee. Alex walked behind Charles and pulled him backwards. Charles spun Alex around and then hit Alex with the bat, but Alex didn't fall. There's also a problem with the stories and where Tylee and Lori were. Lori said when the shooting happened, she was in the kitchen and she came into the living room right after the shooting. She and Alex stared at each other. They were both shocked, and she immediately left the house. Later, Alex called her to see where she was. Tylee said she was outside with JJ because Lori told her to go. At the beginning of her statement, she said Lori came out eventually. And then when the officer asked her how long after the loud noise did she come out, Tylee hesitated and then said really quickly. Alex insisted in both his versions that neither Tylee nor Lori were in the house. He didn't see either of them until they drove up later after the police were called. He did not call Lori. So there certainly are a lot of nagging questions in this whole account, and there'll be more as we break down more of what they said surrounding this in their interrogations. And I'm sure as the trial begins for Lori, we'll get even more information. But a few things that add to suspicions on all of these accounts. The first one is they found a bullet embedded in the ground under Charles. Alex was insisting he shot him straight on when they were both standing up. Another detail is they didn't find Charles' DNA on the bat. Interestingly, neither Tylee nor Alex could remember anything Charles or Lori were yelling about. Lori admits it was all about her phone, that Charles was coming in to try and get the phone. Which begs the question, why didn't Lori just give it to him? All she had to do was hand him the phone and he would have left. So what's really going on? It sounds like there was an altercation in the hall, because two stories agree on that. It does sound like Charles grabbed the bat from Tylee, because everything agrees on that. But in terms of Alex and Charles tussling and falling, and how Charles and when Charles hit Alex with the bat, not so sure on that one. Also, the whole weirdness of Tylee and Lori were gone by the time Charles was shot. That's odd. Let me know in the comments what you think happened. I think it would be really interesting to talk about. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I know there's a million places you could be on YouTube, and I appreciate you taking the time here. If you've enjoyed this content, I'd love to have your subscription and have you come back again for our next video, which will be Lori Vallow's testimony to the police about this incident. And in the meantime, until we meet again, please use your words wisely and well. Take care. Bye-bye.